I hoped at least you'd make me the editor by the time of your introduction. I'd like to invite the panel to come up. Let's not stand on formality. And then take your seats. While they're doing that, just a brief mention on what this panel is about. And I'll just read you the brief because it's a good start. And it says, entrepreneurship has become the hottest trend in the Middle East. I would add there, not just the Middle East. Pretty much the whole of Europe is grasping at this. Silicon Valley's successful entrepreneurs are the new celebrities. We've seen a proliferation of accelerators, incubators, hackathons, etc., and business plans, competitions, and lots of interest from governments who are launching their own initiatives. We also see, and then on the negative side, we also see entrepreneurs on the competition circuit winning with pitches and business plans, but never really able to build a product and a real business. And one of the questions that we were asked to discuss is, are we in a bubble? So that's where we're probably going to start. Ladies and gentlemen, let's briefly just introduce yourselves. We've got a very generous time on this. So, Danny, if you'd like to introduce yourselves and then just work your way down, keep it nice and tight, say who you are and why you're here.
Am I on? Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Danny Farha. I'm an entrepreneur and an investor. I set up a few businesses, both in the traditional and the online space over the last couple of decades, based out of Dubai. I have spent the last couple of years exiting those investments to be able to focus on venture capital in the Middle East. So I've co-founded a venture capital entity called Beko Capital, which is looking to invest in technology businesses in the Middle East.
Excellent.
I'm Khaled Ismail. I think I'm wearing too many hats, but I'll just try to briefly explain them. First, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I started a technology company in Egypt, and that was sold 2 years ago to Intel. And hopefully, most of you will have its products in your hands in the new handsets that you will buy next year. So we're part of Intel now. I also have an angel investment fund in Egypt, KI Angel. I'm the chairman of Endeavor Egypt, which nurtures high-impact entrepreneurship. And I remain the managing director of Intel Mobile Communications.
Hi, so my name is Tim Ray, and I work for a venture capital fund called ePlanet Capital. And I actually started as an entrepreneur. I created a company and went through the whole process of building a company, developing some technology, and selling it. And I so loved being an entrepreneur, but so despised that kind of difficulty of dealing with the investors that I thought, actually, before I do it again, I really need to understand venture capital. So I joined a venture capital fund. I spent quite a few years kind of deploying capital, working with a whole range of startups. And now, although I work for a fund, I describe myself as being an entrepreneur at heart, like I think everybody here. And I love working with entrepreneurs.
Excellent. Thank you.
My name is Usama Fayyad. I'm a technologist and an investor. Started out investing in the US. Did several startups, worked with some of the big companies, Microsoft, Yahoo. In Jordan, we run a company called Oasis 500, where we're investing in a lot of early stage startups. And we are here also because we have an event this evening with ArabNet and WAMDA, our partner, 6 p.m. tonight at Cloud 5 in Solidaire. So if you want to see pitches, come join us and see how the companies, in a few minutes, pitch investors.
Excellent, good puff.
Hi, I'm Hala Fadil. My journey with entrepreneurship started about 15 years ago at MIT, where I started a telecom software company. And when I came to the region about 10 years ago, I thought there was nothing done to help entrepreneurs the way I was helped in Cambridge and Boston. So I started the MIT Enterprise Forum of the Pan-Arab region, which runs the MIT Arab Business Plan competition. And I can see lots of familiar faces here of people who have participated and actually won in that competition. That's it.
Excellent. Right, thank you very much indeed. So we have a fantastic panel. One thing I would say is these sessions are only as good as the questions that are asked. And without a doubt, the very best questions are the questions that come from the floor. They come from the audience. So please, I will be stopping throughout the panel, looking to the audience, looking for questions. If you want to ask a question, and frankly, if you don't ask questions of this panel, then you're missing a tremendous opportunity. So if you want to ask a question, put your hand up, wave, scream, shout, do whatever, and there are people on the side with microphones, and they will come to you. So, okay. One of the things we've been asked to talk about, and I think it's a really good idea, is a sort of stock take. Where are we? What is the state of, I hate the word, but I'm going to use it, ecosystem in the Middle East and North Africa region? How far has the region come, you know, on its journey? Khaled, let's just start with you. I mean, you know, where would you position the region now, you know, in terms of its starting point?
I think we're still in very early days, but I think we've achieved a lot. When we started the MIT Arab Business Plan competition 6 years ago, there was nobody in the ecosystem, and there were very few entrepreneurs. We had 1,000 entries. Now we're up to 5, almost 6,000 entries a year.
Right.
We started, there were only ideas entering the competition. Now we have 1,000 startups that already have revenues and a team that is working on a business plan. And the ecosystem, we have players in every single country across the Middle East, with, of course, Jordan, Egypt, Lebanon, the UAE being ahead of the curve, but then Saudi Arabia, other North African country, in particular Tunis, also picking up. The energy and the hype are there. Lots of people being inspired. I think entrepreneurship now is almost a career. People out of university or in an existing job think of entrepreneurship, of starting a company, and that's great. But a lot of things lie ahead in terms of helping them and reaching.
Osama, you know, you're running Oasis 500. You've seen this journey. How would you characterize the region where it is, and then let's start to look forward. What does the region need to do to move on to the next level?
You know, when we named it Oasis 500 because in one of the meetings with the king in Jordan, we called, after researching the situation, we said, look, the region is a true desert when it comes to early stage investment. Sadly, to this day, if you ask me, very little has changed, right? We created Oasis 500. We said we'll invest in 500 companies in 6 years. We went ahead of our plan. And what I see that really disturbs me is many people start celebrating some of those successes. I mean, you know, this is just one small fund that's, you know, operating with very early stage companies, and everybody's takeaway is, okay, we've solved the problem. Companies can find financing now in early stage. Go talk to Oasis 500. The situation is really sad, right? There are, other than Oasis 500 as an organization, no one else actually gives very early seed stage investment. Across the whole Middle East, there is some awareness. Entrepreneurship has become cool socially, but practically in the ecosystem, nothing truly is there to support entrepreneurs. What happens after we fund our own companies? How easy is it for them to find venture capital? Venture capital in the region is very, very afraid to invest in early stage. It's very focused on late stage. We have actually an excess of late stage capital that's not finding enough deals to deploy in because nobody's allowing the early stage guys to make it. And by the way, the last statement I'll make, the reason we see such a high demand from the people is because there's no other outlet, right? If you ask me, what is the future for this region? How are we going to create the, 20 million to 80 million jobs that the World Bank claims we need in the next few years? You create them by creating businesses. Then you ask yourself, how easy is it to come up with a business? Can you create it quickly? Can you transact across the region? And the answers are no, 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 and you can't even get it funded. So.
Okay. Wow. Okay. There's a lot there, and we'll come to a lot of those points. Job creation, entrepreneurship. Let's. One of the things you talked about was a lack of access to venture capital. We have really three people involved in the financing. Danny, I'd like to come to you on that one. Your view on that? There's an excess of late stage capital. So in other words, that's less risky, and there's a lack of risk capital, early stage venture.
So I think there's an ecosystem, and everyone has to do what they're there to do. We're, as venture capital investors, looking to invest primarily in Series A or thereabouts, and so we need Oasis 500 type entities and many more of them to come to the marketplace to be able to create those few, hopefully not so few, success stories that we can then take to the next level. And I think if we don't work with each other on that front, we're going to fail. The good news is, better late than never. I mean, we are not even a year old as an entity. We've done 5 investments. We're trying to do as many Series A as possible. We're having to come down the stage curve to sort of, we don't do greenfield. We're looking at seed and startup, but again, there's smaller transactions that need a lot of incubation and accelerators. We're not that, even though we're very, very involved from a participatory perspective with our portfolio companies. I will say one thing just on the question of bubble. So we've made 5 investments and we haven't lost an investment that we wanted to make on price. Maybe one. So I think there are mechanisms out there to be able to temper people's expectations on valuation. People do look at whether it's Maktoub in the region and say, $180 million, therefore I must be worth 20, and I have a business plan. And those are issues that we have to deal with. But there are also financial mechanisms that we are able to use for people that have extreme expectations from a valuation perspective to temper that and to make sure that everyone gets to the right place. So I just wanted to address the whole asset price bubble concept. I don't think we have enough. I think in the decade of 2010, when I was out in the online space, we were trying very hard to meet with a lot of the next generation of entrepreneurs, and it was painful. There was no one out there. 2010 to 2012, there was trickles. 2012, 2013, it's exponential. We are seeing people coming and wanting to be entrepreneurs and taking the risk and being entrepreneurs on their own through incubators, accelerators, and it's wonderful. I guess the question is, how does one pick the right?
Yeah. So so we'll come on to that on the whole idea of entrepreneurship and this question of the bubble question. Will come. I just want to address just stick on the financing side of things just for now, because if you're going to build companies, obviously those companies need capital. And if we're saying that we have an interesting point here. We've got lots and lots of ideas, so there's no shortage of ideas coming, but what we're saying is there's a lack of capital. So what does the region need to do to stimulate particularly the early stage capital? Do we see in the region enough angel investors? Do we see enough of those people jumping in? Who wants to pick up on the angel? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm an angel myself, so I can talk about it. I mean, I've invested in 7 companies just this year, and I project to do the same thing in the next year. I disagree that you're the only ones, because there is, at least in Egypt, 3 or 4 other angels that have been very active. Cairo Angels, there is Flat 6, there is Tamkeen. We have several angels now, at least in Egypt. I cannot speak about the whole region. But and we always forget that in this region there is something called friends and family, which is very significant for early stage angel-like investments. And a lot of people start their businesses this way, through family and friends angel investments. So even angel investments, I think, are available. I think it's just the ecosystem is still missing the glue of the money, the ideas, the people, their education. We always forget we're not in the US. So entrepreneurial education is very far behind in the Middle East. So people who come out of college are not really ready to be entrepreneurs from day one. they need support. So for that, we build a mentorship network, and that's very crucial for the success of early stage. And we could not cope, to be honest, with the number of startups that we've seen in the last 2 years. In Egypt, I've seen 3,000, 4,000 startups. I haven't seen 200, 300 mentors ready to mentor these startups. We have a network at Endeavor of about 75 mentors who are very, very good, are very generous with their time, but we need more, and the whole ecosystem has to come together, and we need to create few exits down the road so people are encouraged to move more and more towards this.
Okay, so we come back, let me just summarize and then we'll come to you because I just want to see where we've got to. So we have an issue of we have plenty of ideas. There seems to be no shortage of entrepreneurial zeal, of ideas and in the region, but we'll come to that. But what we're saying is there's a lack of mentorship and a lack of access to funds. Interesting, you talked about friends and family. There's usually a third one, which is fools. Plan 3F, but maybe there are no fools. Yeah, you wanted to come back.
Well, I wanted to respond quickly. I never claimed there are no angels in the region. It's all a question of numbers. He mentioned he saw 2,000 startups in Egypt. My question is, how many startups got funding? And you'll find that number to be really tiny, right? You did 7 deals, we've done 58, 59. That doesn't mean the problem is solved. We actually need thousands to be funded in a region of 300 to 400 million people. So it's a question of numbers, and we always get caught up with this. People forget that it's a matter of scale. The question you have to ask yourself, if there's a reasonable startup doing reasonable work, does that entrepreneur have a reasonable chance of getting financing? In the Arab world, the answer is probably not. Now, it's a great environment for Danny, for myself, for you, because we're the only, we're one of the few. But I'm not going to stand here and tell you I love it because I don't have any competitors. I'm saying the region needs a lot more, and I agree completely. We need the ecosystem to be developed. We do run a mentor network, actually, and it's been very surprising. We have 300 active mentors who actually, our companies average about 4 mentors per company, which has been a surprise. So there's an appetite, not just from entrepreneurs, but from established business leaders. They want to help, which is good.
Tim, I'm going to come to you for the sort of the outsider view. What does this region look like from, you run a global fund. We were talking earlier about the size of the funds that you have under, your organization has under its remit, which is an enormous amount of money. What does this region look like to you?
So it looks very interesting, and from a fund's perspective, we have $1 billion under management, which isn't massive from an asset management perspective, but it's large from a kind of angel investment perspective. And we've done around 100 deals globally. From an investment strategy perspective, we always say that we're agnostic in terms of stage, sector, and geography. So we consider everything. We consider deals on their own merits. And I guess, for me, if I look at the different experiences we've had in different regions, starting maybe in China, kind of back in 2000, 2001, 2002, what you see is that there are 2 independent processes. There is the process of entrepreneurs starting companies and people becoming interested in entrepreneurship. And then there's the process of investors engaging. Those 2 processes aren't coupled.
Right.
And in effect, the money doesn't appear saying, hey, we've got some money, if you guys decide you want to start some companies, give us a call and we'll come along and invest. It works the other way around. You get a bunch of entrepreneurs, you get guys like these guys who actually encourage and stimulate that, and then you actually get a couple of successes, and maybe you get some government money to come in because actually increasingly there's a driver to encourage entrepreneurship because you want to stimulate the economy, and maybe you want to kind of slightly cover up the fact that you've got massive youth unemployment and you want to give these people some hope. But aside from that, then the investors, such as myself, would come in because we see an opportunity to generate a return. And it's not because I'm selfish or greedy. It's because I have investors who give me the money, and they give me money because they want to generate a return. And I have to go back to them and justify every investment that we've done, why we're active in a particular region, show some examples. And it's for me the region is very interesting because we started looking around here probably about 3 or 4 years ago.
3 or 4. Right.
And at that point, we were engaging with a potential LP who said, "I will allocate a large chunk of money to you, but I want a proportion of that money to be deployed in the region."
Okay.
And we looked at that and we thought, we liked the money, but not sure we could deploy that chunk in the region because we don't see the opportunities in the region. So if I were to look now, I would say that it's changed pretty dramatically in a short space of time.
Okay. Let's move on to this question of, one of the questions that we were asked to look at is this idea of, is there an entrepreneurship bubble? And I think we can just ignore this idea, the question of is there a bubble? Normally when you talk about a bubble, you talk about too much money chasing too few ideas. There are plenty of people who would argue that Silicon Valley is getting a little bit bubbly. And there are plenty of examples that we could turn to that would certainly support that theory. But I think let's look at this idea about, is there an entrepreneurship bubble? In other words, is there a risk that we are all raising expectations in this region that guys, go out there, form your company. VCs are queuing up to give you millions. You're going to be hugely successful. 2 years' time, you get out there and you do it. Is there a risk that everything is getting too hot, everything is overheating, and that there is an entrepreneurship bubble of expectation?
Yeah, I'm just going to position this maybe from a different angle. I think there's lots of some frustration because there's a huge gap between the entrepreneurship hype and the actual success stories that this hype has been able to deliver.
Right.
And there's a study that has been done by the Kaufman Foundation with MIT that says that from the date an ecosystem is ready and in place to deliver its first batch of success stories, it takes 10 years on average. I would say we need another 4 to 5 years down the curve to see the actual success stories that we're proud of. Not that there isn't any, there are a few and everybody's aware of them. But we need 4 or 5 more years to actually, for this ecosystem to deliver those success stories that will make us all proud, and we'll stop talking about a bubble, but with actual facts about what entrepreneurship has been able to succeed. And to your point that there are plenty of ideas, but then when it comes to funding, I'm not sure as an angel I would be willing to fund many of those ideas. There's a lot of work, mentorship has been mentioned. There's a lot of work that has to be done on the part of the entrepreneurs also for their expectations, what they need to be like to be fundable, how hard they must have worked on themselves, on their companies, getting customers. We need to set expectations at the right level because plenty of ideas, I would say very, very few fundable. And if they are fundable, to the point of Osama, I would say they would get funding.
Is there a risk, Danny, I'll come to you, is there a risk that if you have lots and lots of people who want to be entrepreneurs but don't have a huge amount of experience, that they will start in businesses that have the lowest barriers to entry? So they will look for the easiest ideas, and there's not a lot of innovation that takes place in those things. It's just like, let's look overseas. Oh, okay, selling shoes. Okay, Zalando has, Zappos did really well. Zalando cloned that idea. Let's sell shoes. That's it. Is there a risk that the kind of people who become entrepreneurs are not the people who are going to innovate successfully? Yeah. Who wants to?
I'll take it.
Yep.
Okay.
So, very quick comment. I agree. There's a bubble in the people taking up the title entrepreneur versus people who are actually doing the real work. So to me, there is no bubble in financing. There are no companies who are getting crazy valuations. There are no companies who are getting too many investors begging to get in.
Yeah.
I don't see any sign of a bubble in reality. I see a sign of a bubble in the hype, and I hope that goes away. However, what's good is entrepreneurship in this region is way below where it should be. So now let me address your copy-paste kind of question of a business model. I've said this before. In 2011, I don't have the 2012 numbers, the e-commerce worldwide was a $7 trillion industry if you count transactions. In the Middle East, or actually in the Middle East and North Africa, that number is anywhere between 100 to 200 million. Two, if you're generous and you include the bill payment in Saudi and other Gulf countries, you get to 2 billion. That's 400 times below where it should be. Now, in that kind of environment, 400 times, not 400%, guys, 400 times, so 40,000%. So what does that mean? That means it's a huge opportunity, you know, for an industry that took everywhere else in the world, for it to come to our region. It's a huge opportunity to take these models and innovate and figure out why it hasn't picked up quickly and very quickly get the lead. We've invested in the first company that, for example, does online sporting goods store. And that was an exit for Oasis 500, an unplanned one, but it was a very early exit with high returns. We've invested in, and I see Muhannad in the audience. He came to us from Syria, had nothing, wanted to enable people to put stores up on e-commerce very quickly in a matter of days, created a company called ShopGo. Within 3 months, he got $500,000 of follow-on investments beyond, because there is opportunity, and he figured out a model that works, that you don't have to pay a huge amount of money to get online and operating.
Okay.
So I think the opportunities are huge, and I think we need to sort of, I don't worry at all in copying business plans and or businesses from other parts of the world. Locally copying, I mean, I would never, and we tell that to all our companies, and we train, you know, 60 companies every month. We tell them, if there is a local competitor and you can't differentiate from them, no way on earth I'm going to invest in you, right? I don't care. So we need the differentiation, we need the innovation. And I think there's always room for innovation. Always room for innovation doesn't mean you have to invent everything, guys. Innovation means slight improvement somewhere that gives you an edge, and that's enough. That's innovation.
Well, innovation also includes process innovation, which is, or execution innovation. I mean, if you look at probably Europe's most successful, or one of Europe's most successful startup companies, which is Rocket Internet, and I know they're operating in Egypt. I mean, they don't innovate in terms of product, they innovate in terms of execution, brilliant execution. Kyle, you wanted to jump in there.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I don't think it's a bubble, but I think there is lack of understanding of how this ecosystem worldwide, when it evolves, how it looks like. And first of all, like we're discussing here, entrepreneurship as if it's only early stage. Entrepreneurship is, I urge everybody to read Hoffman's book, The Entrepreneurship is You. Basically, an employee can be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship can be late stage at an existing company that has impact and can grow. So there is a misconception that, or definition of entrepreneurship is somebody fresh out of college in technology with an idea. I think that's only a very small portion of what this region needs in terms of entrepreneurship. I'm investing in recycling companies. I'm investing in companies that have nothing to do with technology, but they are doing things that are in high demand in this region, and there are no other companies I know of doing similar things. That's the niche, because we're all underserved here. So I think we need to think about entrepreneurship as different stages. At Endeavor, we only take high-impact entrepreneurs, companies that already exist, but that have a potential to grow in multiples and have lower risk. So I think what's missing is not the early stage as much as the full picture for everybody.
Okay, Danny, yep.
So I think one of the things that we have to do as a panel is hopefully come up with useful and productive takeaways. And everyone here is saying the same things in different ways. And I think one of the things that we lack in the ecosystem, so we have the super angels, Fadi Ghandour being one of the most renowned of the super angels, and you know, you have many other, well, not many other, you have a few other out there. I think one thing, investing in these companies, whether they're tech or non-tech, or they're particularly the early stage ones, people don't know how to do it. And I think one thing that we need in the region is angel networks across the region for people to be able to come in an institutionalized manner, spread the risk and spread the learning, and make better informed investments so that again, the ecosystem can develop.
So how does that happen? So instead of, okay, so you're right, let's take something positive. So we need this, so what do we need to do to make that happen?
It's a great question. I think that we have to find the champions that go out there and set up these business angel network institutions across the region to basically have, I know a lot of people who would like to make angel investments. They're not the super angel, and they're not an LP either. But there's a lot of capital out there. They don't know how to do it. They don't know how to assess opportunities. They have no time to necessarily mentor. Some do. And I think if we do it through an institutionalized manner, through setting up, and it's not, we're venture capitalists, so it's not for us to do, but for people out there to be inspired and say, I can do that.
So there's a business plan for anyone out there. There's one. We need we need angel networks. So who here considers themselves to be an angel? Who's an angel investor? Oh, a few. Right. So get out there and form a network. Gentlemen at the front, can I just ask you a question? So where are you? Can we get a microphone? Gentleman at the front, if you could just say where you're from, what country you're from, and is in that region, in your country, would you say that there is an existing angel network, or have you been able to talk to other angels?
My name is Qaswara Al-Khatib. I'm from Saudi Arabia.
From Saudi?
Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. There are a couple. I mean, as we've heard here, I mean, there's Aqal, there's Serb network. There is definitely a hype around, entrepreneurship. So there's lots of, mainly they're coming from government or semi-government that form organizations that says angel investment. But I think it's still at the very early stage. I haven't seen them funding anybody yet. So they're setting up. They're saying we are angel investors. Come propose ideas. But the true funding hasn't happened properly, I would say.
Okay.
So I can. And I want to hear from the audience for
sure.
Yeah,
likewise.
I'll share our experience, right? We do run an angel investor network. I doubt there is a business model in these networks, because at the developmental stage, what you need to do is create an environment where a potential investor can show up, not feel under pressure to invest, and learn, which is very important, as well as get inspired. Now, we run this. It's a lot of hard work. Several people claim to have angel networks. The worst thing you can ever do is have an angel network event and not prepare the companies and the investors for what's coming. So if you have the time, do stop by today at 6 p.m. You will see an example of how an angel network works, and I think how it should. I'm not sure you'll see an example of a business model, but what we do with our companies is we train them. That we drill them 20, 30 times, so that in 6, 7 minutes, they can tell the whole story. The quality is high. We have somebody who vouches for the quality. We don't let them show up just because they said, I'd like to pitch. And therefore, we preserve and respect the time of the investor. And truly, the way to get them going is to get them excited enough to see, you know what? This is inspiring me enough, and it's not a lot of money. Let me try. It happened. It surprised me in the region. We've actually had maybe half our companies raise their funding from our angel network events.
Okay, so so that's one thing we said, we need more angel networks. The other one you were saying is the quality of the pitches that startups need to work on is not good enough. Hala, you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in on Kaswara's point about angels being shy in the region. We've seen lots of angel networks trying to set themselves up and then fail at investing. And I think Usama's point about training the angels is very, very important, because they don't know what angel investing is about.
So who's going to do that? Who's going to train the angels? It seems to me there's a big training problem here.
Yeah, I think the ecosystem and existing angels that have done it, and why not bring also angel networks from abroad, from the US, to train angels, or use super angels as part of an angel network to give them the courage to invest. They don't know what their role should be. They don't know how much they should be involved. They don't know how much money to put. They don't know the risk they're taking.
Okay.
The whole process is unknown to them.
Tim, I want to jump in there because you have this global perspective. Do you see this similar problem with this lack of two things. Do you see the problem? And then what are the solutions? What have other regions of the world done to help in this area?
So I think one of the problems is that it's difficult to actually talk about angel investors as though they're all
the same thing.
I think you get some experienced angel investors who have that entrepreneurship experience, who have a lot to contribute in terms of training, advice, or have deep, kind of knowledge in a particular sector. But then also you have a lot of people who, have money, and they might not have the experience to kind of help the entrepreneur, but they kind of like the idea of making some investments. And the interesting thing for me is if you look in Europe, for example, there is a pretty active base of angel investors. There are angel networks. There are people interested in doing it. But there's a lack of a compelling, kind of business driver to say, actually, if you do a lot of angel investment, it's a great way to make money. It's a great way to earn a return on your capital. There are a few examples, and I've been doing quite a lot of work in the UK, stimulating early stage investing and interacting with early stage investors. And you say, well, why are you doing angel investment? And they say, well, because I get great tax relief on my losses. That's not a great reason to do angel investment.
But it's not a bad. I mean,
it's good to stimulate.
Yeah, let's just pick up on that, because one of the things we haven't talked about is the role of government. And it's interesting you talk about the UK. So the UK did this. The current government did this thing called Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme, where they give very generous tax benefits for angel investors. You're really very heavily protected against if it all goes horribly wrong. Is that a role for government? Or are there other roles for government? Or should we not be looking to government to solve all our problems? Who wants, kind of, good? Because you're in Egypt, so that's an interesting position. You have a government that's, what should we say, in a state of flux. Yeah, is that a role for government?
More than that, I actually started the first governmental incubator in Egypt in the Smart Village about 6-7 years ago. And I stand corrected. It was a wrong decision to let the government run something like that. I think we had some excellent companies at that point in time, but governments are governments. They are very, very bureaucratic, very slow. These guys, these startups, they need a much more dynamic environment than a government. When it comes to tax breaks and so on, I don't think this is an issue. How many make so much profit in the first 3 years to worry about taxes to start with? The only thing that governments should do is make it easy to establish the companies, so make them legal, look legal, help them to set up and so on in a very simple, low-cost process such that they don't have any hurdles to start. But other than that, I don't believe that it was a correct decision, and I don't believe that governments should run their own incubators or fund them.
Brilliant. So the role of government is just make life as easy as it possibly is for entrepreneurs and then get out of the way.
Not quite. I mean, I agree completely. A government should never run these things, right? Government is the furthest thing you can think about from entrepreneurship. Yeah. But here's where the role is. There is a huge, and this is what I really want you to think about, a huge misallocation of resources. Governments pave roads. Governments put up buildings. Governments hire more people. Now, you need to think between yourself, is it worth paving, the 1001st road to this little place versus I create a mechanism by which I enable someone to come and manage a fund. I create a fund which automatically co-invests in angel deals. I create mechanisms that give preferred taxation rights. Taxation doesn't necessarily mean just income tax. It could mean sales tax for these young companies. It could mean all sorts of incentives that attract the companies to set up shop and to operate. I think there's a huge role for government. Unfortunately, you need to have the right kind of governments in place for this role to happen. And we don't have enough vision in the current governments that I see around. There's very few exceptions. I mean, when we started Oasis 500, King Abdullah actually said, I don't want the government involved, but I want to help you as much as possible. Because he actually understood that government could slow us down and not help us. So the message is, though, governments need to enable. They need to invest money. This is an investment area. Education does not happen by itself.
Education, yep.
Angel network education doesn't happen by itself. Entrepreneur education doesn't happen by itself. We get our funding from the UK government, actually, to do our boot camps, and most recently from the US Department of State, because they saw the need and they saw the quality, and they understood that you actually need to sponsor the training, otherwise people will never get trained. Eventually, when the ecosystem starts, we don't need the sponsorship.
I'm going to go to the audience. All right, are there any questions in the audience? We've been talking a lot. There's a lady at the back there with the yellow.
Hi, I'm Nina Curley, Editor-in-Chief of WAMDA. I just have a question for Khalid and Osama. When it comes to incubation, Khalid, you mentioned the education gap that we're facing in terms of startups coming out not educated enough to start companies. And Osama, you've mentioned the lack of follow-on funding. My question is 3 months of incubation enough? We've adopted the Y Combinator accelerator model across the board in the Middle East, and we're seeing a lot of companies come out and not get follow-on funding, but if the ideas aren't viable, what can we create now to fill that training gap so that we're not creating a dumping ground of companies once they come out without a viable idea?
Okay. Should I start?
Yeah,
Should
you start.
Go ahead. Okay, so let me start with the question that was directed. Is 3 months enough? The magic number is between 3 and 6 months, and I actually believe the magic number is not to go beyond that, which is a huge mistake of a lot of the incubators in the region, where they just become a real estate play. Now, why 3 months? In 3 months, if you don't have what it takes, that given resources that's enough to carry you through 3 months, if you don't have what it takes to prove that you can actually create some form of market demand, some convincing market demand, then I don't think a year is going to help you. I don't think 2 years is going to help you. So you need to show that sense of urgency, because a startup needs to have that ability to say, look, I can hustle. I can get clients. I can get somebody to actually believe enough in me to actually champion me, right, as a customer. That is essential. Otherwise, it's very, very hard to convince. Now, does this mean, are we going to be investing in the next, deep technology that's going to require 2 years of development before it hits the market? No, but guess what? I don't believe any technology came out of like a deep, hidden work in a cave for 2 years and come out and unveil it to the world. It comes out in little bits and pieces. And if the early bits work, you start building on top of them, and then you get investors, and then you can do deeper work. So I'm a big believer in the 3 to 6 months is more than enough to make the call.
So yes, 3 months is what they need. Okay.
Yeah. I disagree because I've been with some of the companies for over a year now, and they need continuous nurturing. They need continuous support. I don't call it incubator, and I'm not in favor of this incubator model where it's a real estate sort of sit here and do what you do. They should sit the closest to their homes, at least given Cairo traffic. Don't build incubators. Let people sit in the garage next to their home and do what they do best, but they need to be mentored for a long time. There are very rare cases of an early stage where from day one they know what they want, they know what they will do, and they do it right. They have to go through phases, and many times they pivot. They change the model a little bit after 6 months, after a year. I did a company and I sold it to Intel after 7 years. And on the first 3 months of that company, I could not even see what's coming. I could not even have a plan for what's coming. After 2 years, it was a different plan. And when I sold it, it was a different plan. So I think startups need to be nurtured for a long time, given the education gap, or we let them fail, and I don't call it failure. I think we need many companies to start and start again and start again, because we don't have that many who go and work for a company, stay there for 4 or 5 years, and then start up their company. I think that's a wiser idea, to be honest, because there is a learning curve that they have to go through. But fresh out of college, I think we have to include that 90% of them will not succeed the first time, and that will be part of their learning curve.
Okay. And let's be clear, the 6 months, while we get the next question, the 6 months is not about the company becoming big. The 6 months is about that person or persons, the team, proving that they can actually change, adapt, fix, respond, tinker with the model enough to generate the next version of it that's going to attract more investors.
Okay,
so nobody takes it away.
Entrepreneurs, you have a maximum of 6 months. There was a question, lady in the front.
It's not a maximum of 6 months. Only the early is the beginning.
Okay.
Right.
I'm Diana Boghanim. I'm from the Ministry of Telecommunications. I'm a government official, and I'm a public servant. I'm bureaucratic, but I do think that the government can help a lot in these issues. And we do have a very dynamic and active minister who has been encouraging entrepreneurs and the youth in starting their in businesses, developing applications, and establishing the Beirut Digital District just to provide them with all the infrastructure they need. So I do believe there is a place for the government there, in addition to the role of the Association of Banks in Lebanon, who has been encouraging entrepreneurs in a low-profile way, but they are doing well. But I do remember a story when I was young. I come from the mountains, so everybody used to plant, and when the agriculture used to be productive. So there were the hypes. So when everybody said that the apples are making more money, so everybody started planting apples. And eventually the price of apples went down. So the creative person and the smart one was the one who started to think about what kind of apple do I want to plant. And I think this hype of entrepreneurs, I hear about it everywhere, I read about it. I was personally, when I was acquiring my master's degree, I was one of the project applications to one of the venture capitals. I went to the 5 finalists, even though I'm government. But I do see a very big role for the universities here. Where does innovation come from? It's from the education and from universities. Where have you, as venture capitals and people here on the stage, where have you partnered with these universities and started educating these people from their early stages before you can say now that they are not ready, they're graduating and they're not ready there? Where have you done that? Thank you.
Can I ask you one question back, if you're from the... What do you think is the single most important thing that government brings to this conversation? What's the number one thing government can do?
Well, I think it's support and providing part of the ecosystem, not the money all the time, because I'm speaking about Lebanon. Maybe we cannot provide money, tangible cash, but we can provide part of the ecosystem, which is connectivity as a Ministry of Telecom I'm talking about, as providing the right governance and the right decrees and laws for such thing to develop.
Okay, right.
Can I respond to that?
Yes,
then?
please do, and then I'm going to get the audience to respond to that question. So I'm slightly going to pick on you there because we have someone from the government. So entrepreneurs in the audience, if you have to think about what would you want from your government?
So, obviously it comes without saying that government should be investing in education and universities, but as a concrete step of what government can be doing today for entrepreneurs, I think they could be their first customer. Okay. Sourcing is, governments usually are a credible customer, and entrepreneurs need credibility. And sourcing for government, if they put quotas on how many entrepreneurs they could be using, if we talk about the oil and gas industry in the region, many entrepreneurs working in that space, energy, even IT solutions, government is a great reference as a client.
Brilliant. So that's one night. So make it easier for entrepreneurs to do business with government. I hope you've got a list. You're going to write them down. What else can government do?
So thank you. I'm delighted that you're actually here in the audience, but I think I'm going to walk off the stage virtually and just pretend as though I'm sitting with you guys over there. What I would want to see if I was an entrepreneur is government, senior government, the ministers, the sheikh, the president, whoever it is, sitting in the audience here, listening to what we have to say in the next panel so that they can actually be inspired to catalyze the change that we're all advocating.
I'll tell a story on that. The Seed Camp, which is a big European investment, did a pitching competition in Estonia. And the president of Estonia came to open it. He then sat at the back of the hall for the entire morning session to listen to what was going on in the session. He remained throughout just to hear what was going on. Right, anyone have any other things that they want government to do? Gentlemen right at the back there, keep your hand up and then we can get a microphone to you. Or maybe... I'm so sorry. I do feel I'm slightly picking on you, but it's always nice to have people from government.
So, good morning. My name is Ahmed Layali. I work with ICT Qatar. And Khalid, I miss you. I applaud on what the lady in red had mentioned. Government has a long things to do. In USA, where Osama comes from, where Khalid comes from, government's still doing a lot, the zillion of things. Nowadays, there are since almost a couple of years, they are discussing now the entrepreneur's visa. And this is a government thing. Canada, I think they approved it already. So again, if angel investors are afraid of jumping in, I think it's the role of the government to encourage them to jumpstart things.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So entrepreneurs visa, that's always a good one. Any other suggestions for what people want from government? And then we'll move on, because I do feel terribly like I'm picking on you.
Can I say something?
Oh, yeah.
I think it's related to government and education. I still insist our region is not the US, where you have the Stanfords and the MITs. Our region is really handicapped in terms of its education. I taught 17 years at Cairo University, which is the biggest and the best in Egypt, and still I say the government should encourage education in relationship with entrepreneurship. And the way I think about it is actually the biggest problem in the education system, at least in Egypt, are the professors themselves. The professors are extremely academic. Very, very, very few of them have had anything to do with entrepreneurship and are not judged by whether they help students start up anything and so on. I think there must be a change in mindset that the government can enforce for professors to open up and have this ability to start up companies within the university itself and use the university as the very, very early stage incubator or startup place.
Do they have a technology transfer office? Is that a... Tim, you wanted to come in there.
I've seen very few.
Tim,
So I think for me it's incredibly important, you're kind of listening, which I've been doing a lot of here, to kind of step back and say we're talking about, in a lot of senses, two different things. You know, when we talk about venture capital, we talk about investing, but we're talking about two different things here. And you know, first and foremost, we're talking about a social mission to encourage entrepreneurship, to educate, whether that's educating professors at university to pass that on, or educating people at university to enable them to understand how to embark on entrepreneurship, or from an incubator perspective to educate entrepreneurs or to educate angels. I think there's a whole social mission piece to encourage entrepreneurship. And one of the reasons why that's essential, and for me one of the reasons why often government involvement is essential, is because as an asset class, if you look at it from a pure black and white money perspective, as an asset class, early stage investment stinks.
Yeah, terrible.
It's not a good investment asset class, which means that to encourage it, we need that social mission to push it forward. You know, my role, you know, kind of looking a little bit further down the line, my role is to actually, you know, support that, encourage that, but my role is to take money from investors who want to earn a return on their capital to actually pick companies, and actually those companies exist in the region. So I've given the example of one of our companies in the region. We invested in 2008 before it started its business. We've done 8 rounds of investment. We recently closed a $50 million round of investment.
50 million.
That's a regional company. It was started in the region, and it's very successful.
I want to, we've got 5 more minutes, and there's one last bit, and then we'll use most of that 5 minutes in the, with the panel, with the audience, and I hope they can join in on this one. And it's this whole idea, there are 2 areas that we haven't really talked about, which is success and failure and cultural issues around entrepreneurship, and also the importance of role models. And Tim, we were talking earlier about you were an investor in Skype, and I just want to share one story on Skype. Skype, as I'm sure many of you know, was founded by 2 Swedish entrepreneurs. But actually the company was built, and I'm going to mention Estonia again. And in Estonia, it was built by, there were 4 engineers. And when that company exited, those 4 engineers got a measurable percentage of the GDP of Estonia. They actually, you could, you know, they were worth, I don't know what the figure was, but they were worth this percentage of Estonia. When you see those, if you go to Tallinn now, those 4 guys are still there. And it's hugely important because other entrepreneurs look at them and go, I used to play basketball with that guy. I was at school. He's no better than me, and yet he has a percentage of my country. So the role of role models is hugely important. The second question is one on attitudes of success and failure. Now, I speak as a European. And basically, in Europe, nobody wants you to succeed and nobody wants you to fail. We just want everyone to be the same. If you're successful in America, people look up to you. If you're successful in London, people scratch your car. If you fail, well, just basically, just don't. don't fail. Story of somebody I know who's a very successful entrepreneur now. He failed in a very, very spectacular way. He was arrested in Atlanta, Georgia, with 6,000 ecstasy tablets in his luggage. If you want to fail, that's about as big a fail as you can get. He actually now is a very successful entrepreneur, but he couldn't even get a bank loan to buy a computer. So he managed to do it through other mechanisms. So culturally, what are attitudes like to success and failure in the region? I'm going to come to someone else. Just simply, can I start? Let's take attitudes to failure. How would you characterize, is failure, in the US, failure is seen as a stepping stone to success. In Russia, failure is not an obstacle. How would you say here?
I'm going to answer failure, but I like the role model question a lot because I think it's the key one for the region.
Yeah. But that's success. Let's talk about failure first.
Okay.
I say let's not go there because I liked where we were heading before, which was let's look for solutions. What can we do to fix things? How can we be at least optimistic? To me, change of behavior is essential, and the best way to change behavior is to change incentives, and that's through doing the role models. So I would love to hear
Okay,
what
all right. Well, fair enough.
But it's all related
Let's go to role
because
models,
you have failed in relation to some values that are promoted by role models. I go back to the same Kaufman Foundation study that was done across all region, where they interviewed entrepreneurs and young people, actually not even entrepreneurs, in the US, asking them, who's your role model? And most of them said, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and they were not entrepreneurs, just young people. In this region, you ask them, who's your role model? They have none. Okay. So there isn't any inspiration behind the youth. Lack of role models. And then if they have one, or if they used to have one, which usually used to be a politician, they don't promote the right values. An entrepreneur promotes the values of hard work, of valuing feedback, low ego, these type of values that are very, very much required in this region. Because the people who are pointed at as successful usually made money easily, inherited money, or are in positions that they don't necessarily deserve if we're talking about skills and hard work.
Okay.
So it is really about valuing...
I'm going to go to the audience.
I need to say something.
Very, very quickly, and then I'm going to go to the audience.
I think we're evading to talk about failures here, and I think it's very important to talk about failures. Our entrepreneurs think failures don't exist. When I stood in ArabNet 2 years ago and I was asked to tell about the success story of selling a company to Intel, I stood there and I talked for about 50 minutes about my 4 failures before that company, so people can learn. They don't learn from success. It's only something they look up to, but they don't learn from it. But you learn from failures because that's the mistakes you make.
I mean, that's exactly what I want to go to. Right, I want someone brave in the audience. I want a brave entrepreneur who's going to tell about their failure and what they learned from it. So who's going to be brave and confess that they failed, and what did they learn? Ooh, no one's failed.
See?
That's what I said. That's why they're here.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
I can talk about failure.
Tell me about one failure.
I was in Silicon Valley at Berkeley, and then Silicon Valley in 1994 and 95, and the internet was starting, and I thought the internet was nothing. So everybody was starting their own company and taking advantage of cheap domain names and stuff, and I didn't understand what was happening. And just 2-3 years later, I realized how big the mistake was. And I think sometimes it's difficult to be too early on a market. And you have many startups that are just too early for their own market psychologically. Okay. So the market is moving, and then you don't understand what's going on.
I think there's a simple look. We are in a negative environment in this region. People are afraid of failure. They don't like failure. Blah blah blah. I heard it. Khalid, I'm sure, has heard it a million times. Danny heard it. Yet, despite all this negativity, they are investing. We are investing. When we started Oasis 500, I heard so many pieces of advice. Why are you doing this? Why 500 companies? You're going to fail. People are going to make fun of you. People are going to, and you know what? You just do it.
That's right.
And when you do it, you set new examples, and I think people will follow. They're not going to follow examples of failure. They're going to follow examples of success. In 2 years, we've now had 30, 40 real people who actually came from nowhere, didn't have family wealth, and now are attracting hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars of investment. These are success stories. These are examples, and this is what changes culture.
Okay, last thing, because we're going to be pulled off the stage. Now, very quickly, I want all it, so there's one takeaway. I want you to give one piece of advice. You've got to keep it really tight, because they're going to turn our microphones off. One piece of advice to give to the audience in a single sentence, and just work our way down, that you would want them to take away.
How long do I have?
You've got like 10 seconds.
Wow. I think hard work, persistence, resilient learning, just asking smart people across the board for input, and then just executing.
Yeah, coming from the land of pyramids, I say, let's build together that pyramid of entrepreneurship. We need to stick together, and everyone puts his bit and piece of it. And we are not in no way competing, because it's very early stage for all of us. What Osama is doing, what we're doing, everybody is doing. It's all putting that pyramid together, and we have few more years to work very hard all together.
So work together.
Yeah.
Tim?
This sounds contentious, but I want to say that no one should blame their lack of success on a lack of investment. Every business has the opportunity to get the investment that it deserves.
Brilliant. Every business has the, excellent.
So
Osama.
the 10-second answer is just do it, stop talking about it. So if you want to do an angel network, do it. If you want to do an investment fund, do it. More importantly, if you want to do a startup, just do it, and the world will change around you.
The world will change around you. Fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with the just do it. I would say do it without any ego. Listen to feedback. Talk to as many customers as you can. And bring with you people who are better than you. Not like you, but just better than you, who know things you don't know.
Okay, and my last piece of advice is when you're successful, come and talk to the Wall Street Journal, because we're always very interested. What a fantastic panel. Thank you very much indeed.